In this episode, we talk all things Buffalo Sabres. More Jack Eichel. And are they going to go 82-0? And in Trending Now, we talk consistency in NHL officiating and disciplinary action. And can the Senators actually make the playoffs this year? Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey. I'm your host, Peter Bojaranov, and the mic is always on. It's your one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun hockey community, bring everyone together. You can find me on Twitter now at pbojaranov, Bojarinov. V as in Victor, formerly at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. That's Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag at Jablam Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on those 3 dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, www.jablamsports.com, for our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get all the links to everything we mentioned on this show, including guests. We've even got articles this year and much more content weekly. For our podcasts, click on podcasts on our website and then hockey on this show specifically, right on our website. It's our first Trending Now of the season. We're in the swing of things. It's already, I guess you can kind of say, week 2. Joining to discuss what everyone is kind of talking about is Wayne Scanlan. He writes for the Ottawa Senators for Sportsnet.ca. Before we get to Matt, Wayne, you've been covering sports for some time now. What was the most interesting story you've done?
Oh my God! In all that time, I mean, I've been to 10 Olympic Games and I've covered the Senators from the inception, so it's kind of hard to pick one. But off the top of my head, being there for Sidney Crosby scoring the golden goal in Vancouver was right up there.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I liked when they replayed it from different angles and you hear the whispers of like him calling for the puck from McGinley and stuff. I know Matt is probably not thrilled about that game, possibly. But
I mean, that was the last time American hockey's even been remotely relevant on the Olympic stage. So I'll take a silver.
But my prediction is Team USA is going to be better in the future. You can already see the established roster they have now, as well the amount of money they're putting into these younger talent and younger kids. I would be scared for the future of Canadian hockey, and it might not be Canada's game in the future. What do you think, Wayne, about that?
Well, I don't dispute it, really. I know Murray Costello, the longtime head of the Canadian Hockey Association, he used to warn everybody. He said, when the Americans start getting interested in hockey, look out, because all the best athletes are playing baseball, they're playing basketball, they're playing football. You're starting to see, I mean, just look on Ottawa's roster with Josh Norris and Brady Tkachuk. I mean, the up-and-coming American rosters at the World Junior level, they're coming, and they're coming hard, and they come with a lot of confidence at a very young age.
Oh, yeah. Totally forgot, too. The Tkachuks are American. They have a good team coming up.
The Tkachuks are American. Eichel is American. Matthews is American.
California is really growing the sport as well, I've noticed. Even, obviously, you can see the teams, but from the start up, it's really extreme over there. So you can find Wayne on Twitter at HockeyScanner. And also back on the show is Mathieu, SFG. Esteves. He writes for Raw Charge, a part of SB Nation. You can find him on Twitter at Matthew S. Esteves as well. Pretty much same thing. Gents, we are going to get to those suspensions and fines in due time, but I really want to talk about the upstart Senators. Wow. Like, if we go back to last season, Wayne, they finished the season 9-2-1. 9-2-1. They defeated the Leafs, the Canadiens, the Jets during that run. We all know that they were established. We all see, maybe not the Canadiens so far this year, but we feel that they're still going to be a great team even coming this year. Fantastic run that they had. They've started already 2-1, defeating the Leafs and the Stars, who are projected to be very good teams as well. Are the Senators actually possibly a playoff team this year?
I think they're going to contend all season long. I mean, that's the goal. If they get in the playoffs this year, that would be a bonus. I think, in the big picture, their best years are going to be 2 or 3 years from now, when these young players, get closer to their peak. But I think they're going to make some noise in the Atlantic Division. And I think we've seen some glimpses of that in the first week. Like, they probably could have won both those games against the Leafs. And in their win, they got some good goaltending from Anton Forsberg. But, I think they're going to be pretty good.
You said his name, Anton Forsberg, a waiver wire pickup. He played fine last season, but this season, it's early. It is early, but his numbers look fantastic. He's stealing the show. We're going to drop, obviously, on the website in our game notes page for this episode, this season 7, episode 3. Wow, he's made some spectacular saves, but including the Marner to Tavares down low glove save on him. We're going to post that video on the website. Is Forsberg almost the real deal? I know many teams have given up on him, but he's had solid stats, and this year he looks even better.
I think he is for real. Yeah, he made 46 saves. It was a career high in the number of shots he faced against the Leafs that one night of 48. I think he saw an opportunity here, and I think he worked on fitness level in the offseason to a degree that he hadn't in the past. He's only 28, 29, so he's, as goalies go, he's not ancient, and it can take a while at that position. But with Matt Murray still sidelined with a kind of a flu cold bug that's been going around, and Filip Gustavsson, who's also been a smart little goaltender and a Senators product. He got the win against Dallas and looked very solid on Sunday. So, their goalie picture is looking okay right now.
Yeah, you mentioned Gustavsson quickly. What does this mean for him? Because I think a lot of people thought, he's the next big thing. He's the future of the Senators. Second-round draft pick, 55th overall by the Penguins at the time. Is this push him back if Forsberg keeps on playing at least this somewhat elite level?
Yeah, I think if Gustavsson even is able to hang around here, like it's not quite like last year where they kept 3 goalies and he could have, he was kind of penciled in to start in the American Hockey League with Belleville this year. So it's only because of Murray's illness or what have you. And the fact, my hunch is if these 2 guys continue to play well, there's no rush to get Matt Murray back in the net.
All right. So we've had already a few incidents early in the league. Cross-checking was a big factor in the playoffs, and in the preseason, we kind of saw the refs really taking a stand. Do you feel that they've already gone away with them being kind of stingy early on in this season, Matthew?
With cross-checking in general, I feel like they've definitely made their message known. There was the penalty on Sergachev in the Washington game where he was called for cross-checking when the guy was already on his knees. That's a call that I was honestly like, wow, they're actually holding to it. I was surprised. I'm fine with it. I've always felt like players have taken liberties with cross-checking. But there is a fine line with it. It's just hard to dictate what it is. So it's up to the officials to kind of maintain this level of consistency, because it's not necessarily the officials don't call things. It's that they'll call things one way early in the game, And then later in the game, they don't call it. And that's the biggest thing that players always say. It's not necessarily like rule book. It's like, just be consistent. Like, if it's a penalty in the first, it's a penalty in the third. That's the biggest thing. So it'll be interesting to see how the officials keep this going, or if it's going to be, like how slashing was after the, big lockout, where it was all, no slashing, or they were super, super anal about it. And then they just tapered off, That's what I'm afraid of, because they've done that in the past numerous times.
Yeah. We saw, was it Tim Peel that was suspended last year? I believe so. And then we've already seen 3 referees this season retire. So kind of the changing of the old guard. Wayne, what does that mean for the future of referees? How can they be consistent? Is it possible, or are they always going to kind of go with the flow of how the game is going and then kind of, throw a penalty in here because they missed another one?
Yeah, no, I think Mathieu hit on it. And players and coaches and even fans, they just want a level of consistency. Like, I watched all the preseason games, and they were anybody with a stick, and they were, the arm was going up, and it was a bit much, and you knew it wasn't going to last. And we're already seeing them get away from that a little bit. But then they missed a blatant call, like Radek Faksa had a wicked slash on Tim Stützle on Sunday, and there was fear that he'd broken his wrist or re-injured the wrist he had surgery on just last year. The wrist was fine. They had a quick x-ray, got him back on the ice. And now, he was fined, Faksa was fined $5,000 maximum allowed today, but no penalty called. And when you look at the replay, there's an official standing right there. How does he miss something like that?
Yep.
And there's a lot of kind of innocent looking taps that they call, and then they miss that. So you can see where the frustration can be.
Yeah, you're right. I saw Tavares' face and their actions after that game, when in the last minute of the game, the first game against the Senators, he stick lifted him. We see guys like McDavid and Matthews do that a million times a game, and it's fine. And sometimes they miss it, and then they call that one a penalty. So it's tricky. Yeah. It's tricky stuff. I'm glad Stützle was back on the ice, and oh my goodness, he has some tremendous creativity. I see him being an all-star for many years. And wow, at the end of the speed he went at the end of the game, and the nice little move, he couldn't finish. And hopefully it's not the wrist that's bothering him as well.
That was a gorgeous play. Like, if they've been playing that all over since Twitter today, with the pass to Batherson, who had to kick it up to his skates to stay onside, and then get it back over to Stützle, who had to kick it up at his skates to get a shot off. And if he'd scored on that, it would have been a highlight reel for weeks to come. But yeah, he looks like he's ready to explode, because he's getting these chances. He's breaking in. He's hitting posts. Mm-hmm. It's going to come in probably in bunches when he does hit.
Yeah, for sure. I see big things coming in Stützle's future. And I talked to sometimes my old buddy, the only person I've seen during the last year and a half, because I was living at his house while I'm going to school. And we kind of watched a little bit. And he's like looking at him, he's like, see, when a regular guy picks up the puck, it's fine, but a regular person that plays hockey can't do these things. You cannot pick up the puck off the skate to the stick that easily. You think this is easy? This is not easy. I'm like, all right, take it easy. Oh my goodness. The Battle of Alberta.
Just watch Connor McDavid, right? Like, he does stuff, and you kind of go, he's not part of the human species, that guy. Like,
no, Wayne is spot on. McDavid he's a video game character with the stuff he does.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's absurd what that man does.
Yeah. And let's go to that. The Battle of Alberta, Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames. When I'm watching this game, I'm like feeling the referees, they're just going with the flow, because it's the Battle of Alberta. They're letting them kind of do whatever they want. And in my mind, when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, this is fun. I love it. It's the greatest game ever. But now, as an older gentleman watching hockey, I'm like, this is idiotic. Sometimes when you kind of look at it and watch the game and what the refs are allowing and how crazy it gets, and it kind of ramps up. And it's hard to referee a game when the play ramps up and it gets away from them. So then the league, of course, the one incident out of all, many, of course, is they fined Flames defenseman Rasmus Andersson $5,000, the maximum allowed by the CBA, for roughing Oilers' tiny little guy, Kailer Yamamoto, right? And I'm thinking of like, holy Jesus. That's ridiculous. Do you see what he did? It reminds me of 2012 when Shea Weber threw, Henrik Zetterberg's face in the boards, and he was just, again, fined just for that in a 2-minute minor. He didn't do anything. He's kind of like, he was kind of pushed. Yamamoto was barely pushed into the net. He didn't do a thing. But Andersson comes in, and he threw a couple of like fists with the glove on and shoved them and stuff. And I was like, 2 minutes? That's nothing. And I'm surprised he, in my opinion, mine should get maybe suspension. Wayne, is the NHL, in my mind, not cracking down enough on these kind of plays?
Well, I think it gets back to what we talked about earlier. It's, their policing off the ice has much of the same issues that they have on the ice. And that's, finding a level of consistency and kind of knowing where the bar is set. Like this is the bar. You can't go beyond that. I just think that they've been a bit erratic in how they assess things. And it's problematic because it's hard to have faith in the game. You need the authority, right? It's kind of like you need law and order in the streets. Otherwise there's mayhem, right? Like you've got to have a system that you can believe in. And we all love the game of hockey. But we want to know that the best players are safe. Like Connor McDavid, as I understand it, there wasn't a single penalty called on, an opponent against him in the playoffs last year. And when he's got the puck so much and is manhandled to the degree that he is, well, it just makes teams want to just load up with goofy guys because the best player in the world isn't allowed to do his thing. So, would they allow that in the sport of basketball? I mean, there's not a chance, right? The best players kind of run the sport and they don't call them for anything and everybody gets called for stuff they do on them. And that's kind of the right way, really. They should be leaning more to that model rather than what they have.
Yeah. I agree with Wade because at the end of the day, your stars are what's going to sell. I mean, does not everyone, no offense to you, Wayne, everyone who's around Wayne's age or a bit older, don't they always talk about the great days of the 80s when Gretzky was just obliterating the league? Mm-hmm. Gretzky sold the league. Like, we wouldn't have the NHL we have today without Gretzky's impact. Hell, we wouldn't even have what California has in hockey without Gretzky's impact there. Why is that? Because Gretzky was the greatest player ever. And because they allowed him to do his thing. And now we're reaching a point where it's like, like you said, Connor McDavid can't even draw a penalty in a playoff series where he's clearly getting mauled to death. We're not asking for like basketball treatment, but like, come on, man. Like, we shouldn't be championing, like, no offense to the guys who are out there. I mean, every single guy who's on the NHL is an unbelievable player in general, but like, fourth liners can't be the guys who are championed when, Connor McDavid is the only reason the Oilers even made it there in the first place, and it's this tightrope the league has to kind of navigate because they have to be better with it, but they also can't, they don't want to alienate older fans. Understandable. I get that. But at the end of the day, those older fans are going to go away at some point, and you're going to have that younger fan base who's just going to be jaded and be like, oh, you're not going to call anything anyway. I'm not going to bother watching. So it's a weird tightrope they have to navigate to find a way. And like Wayne said, it's just find a level of consistency. If we can just be consistent with something, then a lot of the complaints will disappear. But like, they have to find that consistency first. And it's not even just penalties. It's other things like, defensemen literally shoving guys into their own goaltender and then getting the call go their way. That still baffles me to this day that a defender can just cross-check a guy square in the back, right onto his goaltender, and then they get a goaltender interference call. And it's like, but the dude didn't even do anything. Like, he got pushed. What's he supposed to do? Yeah. It's things like that. It's just like, we got to have a standard. And I feel like the standard, one day it's here, one day it's here, one day it's on the moon, one day it's, in the Pacific Ocean. It's all over the place.
The thing that I have sometimes against the league is they sometimes only go strict on them if a player gets injured. It just seems like that's the thing that, okay, now we're going to do something about it. Whereas there's guys like I watched my Leafs growing up. Grabowski took it, and I swear he must have played with concussions the next shift, the next game. And there's a lot of guys that kind of do that. It's laughable sometimes that on some plays a player could be seriously injured and nothing comes of these situations. We've seen just even last year, Tom Wilson's interactions with the Rangers in those games with Artemi Panarin. What happens? Because they don't do anything with Tom Wilson and him throwing down Panarin and the other skilled players, total changes. The organization changes guys above. They bring in a Ryan Reeves on their team. My goodness. What do you do then, Wayne?
Yeah, we're heading back to the caveman days. We're not advancing forward. We're going back to caveman hockey. It's ridiculous. It's just exactly what Matthew was talking about in the playoffs. These third and fourth line guys, these role players, they become heroes. Their importance becomes elevated. Why? Because they don't really call penalties, and so these so-called energy guys can maul the best players and get away with it. And so there's value there. So now the Rangers feel they've got to arm themselves. It's not so much for the regular season, but in the playoffs to protect their younger guys. It's all kind of an old guard way of thinking. And if they called the rules, but I mean, do they do this in football? Do they have to have an enforcer on the New England Patriots? I don't think so. I mean, the linemen will go after the linemen and that kind of thing, but you don't have to hire a goon, and the league should be past that. And there's so much skill in the game, so much young talent. Honestly, we should be just running with that.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to kind of bring up the Evander Kane thing, so I'm going to try to leave it for next week. We brought on Matthew to talk about the suspension with the Detroit Red Wings forward Dylan Larkin for one game for roughing on Tampa Bay Lightning Mathieu Joseph on October 15th of the wild punch that he did in retaliation. There's going to be the video. We're going to put it on our website again, Season 7, Episode 3. The direct quote, I listened to what NHL disciplinary action said. And it's a little long said, but I'll try to summarize as best I can. But Larkin then gets to his feet, finds Joseph, and swings wildly, punching the unsuspecting Joseph in the face with a gloved hand with sufficient force to knock him to the ice. This is roughing, and it's important to note that this is not the case of players willing to engage in mutual confrontation. Joseph has no warning that he is about to be punched, and marking this given no time to brace for contact to defend himself or choose to engage in the altercation. We understand that Larkin is frustrated on the play, and our department has established in the past players are not excused from punishment merely because they are acting in response to the actions of the other player, which causes the player to rise above supplemental disciplinary action in retaliation to the nature of the punch of an unsuspecting opponent. Again, those key words I find interesting. No warning for Joseph, though he delivered a vicious check from behind into the boards, and I think he should be kind of ready for somebody to retaliatory action there, either Larkin or a teammate. He could have easily got injured there. And also, just that he's unsuspecting opponent again in that case, and retaliatory. So when they say retaliatory, so it means that you can cause a vicious check or a vicious hit. But hey, if it's not retaliatory, it's fine. We're not going to give you a big suspension. Matthew?
Yeah. The hit was dumb. Mm-hmm. The hit was dumb. Larkin was already bent over a little bit, and Joseph caught him at a weird angle, and it was all bad. He had no business making that hit. Like, if you want to put your body on him, put your hip into him a little bit. There's no reason for you to push like that. So there's no absolving Joseph from the hit. He absolutely should have been penalized more than what he was for that hit. That was stupid. What Larkin did, I thought was cheap, but I can also understand it. Like, the guy just got done with neck surgery over the offseason. He spent a whole lot of time rehabbing. I get why he's frustrated. Do I agree with him just spinning around and just throwing a punch like that? No. But do I understand why he did it? Yeah. Do I agree with the suspension? Yeah. Do I think Joseph should have got more? Absolutely. But again, if they had just called the penalty on it in the first place, could have avoided the whole damn thing. But no, they didn't call it. So what do you expect? Like, like it's the NHL's own fault that happens. If you just called the penalty on Joseph in the first place, they might go for their pound of flesh in some other way. Just, you hit him like that. But like, it's just the league just bungles it. They bungled it on the ice, and they only got a portion of the discipline correct. Yeah. So it's just it's a carnival essentially when it comes to officiating in those situations. It's just like, just call them. Like, you could tell it's a bad hit. Like, come on. It's nonsense.
You know what? I'm going to leave it at that. You can't let things build up and ramp up, or it just gets worse and worse later on in the game or in those kind of instances as well with Buffalo and Jack Eichel. So we're going to next up talk in our team episode with what the Sabres are going to do with Jack Eichel and letting it dwell. And are they going to do the surgery? They don't want to. Eichel wants to. And it looks like they're going to have to move him. So next up on Team ISO Sabres Talk, we'll have Joe Yerdon, Melissa Burgess, and Anthony Sciandra talking all things Sabres. Again, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. You can get Matthew on Twitter at Matthew S. Esteves and Wayne at Hockey Scanner. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Have you ever wanted a one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single NHL team? Look no further than jablamsports.com. We've had guests from James Sabalski, Art O'Cal, and yes, even Dennis Bernstein shows up monthly. We are a fun hockey community bringing everyone together. Find us wherever you get your podcast and type in JABLAM Sports. That's Jablam Sports. Our website is, yes, you've called it, jablamsports.com. Go download and subscribe right now. You can also find us on socials at Jablam Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm Peter Bojanov saying, puck you later. It's another first segment of the season, this time Team ISO. We are Team ISOing the Buffalo Sabres this week. So we've got from some questions from the Twitter machine, and we're going to put them in there. Remember, if you have some questions for myself, our guests, or anybody, me, you can reach me at pbojanov, or of course our team at Jablam Sports. Joining to discuss all things Sabres, a.k.a. more Jack Eichel, are Melissa Burgess. She's the managing editor at Die by the Blade, and of course director of social media at Buffalo's Junior Sabres. The list goes on. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You can reach her on Twitter at _Melissa Burgess. And back on the show are Joe Yerdon. He's, of course, been with many places, NHL.com, NBC Sports, The Athletic. You can reach him on Twitter at Joe Yerdon. Joe, welcome back.
Nice to be back, Peter. Good to talk to you again.
Cool. And also Anthony Sciandra. He's the co-host of the Expected Buffalo podcast. You can reach him on Twitter at DBTBANTH. I believe that's the old one, Die by the Blade. Anthony, right?
Yeah, it's actually Expected by Anth now.
There you
all
go.
All spelled out. That's yeah.
Expected by Anthony. Much easier than Die by the Blade. You moved on from Melissa and her Bang of Thugs, right?
No, actually, I was very glad to see Melissa take over. Chad and I both moved on from Die by the Blade to focus solely on Expected Buffalo, and the site is in very good hands.
Nice. So you guys are expecting lots of stuff, especially with some added analytics.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to the Eichel stuff and talk, and of course, maybe their chances of going 82-0. But the Sabres dropped a huge bomb move today, right? They picked up Christian Wolanin off waivers from the LA Kings. Melissa, what does that mean for the depth of this blue line? Does Wolanin kind of find himself in the top 6 or 7?
I think for the time being, he will, if only because of Henry Jokiharju getting moved to injured reserve. He got hurt, and it was initially billed as he'll be out a couple of weeks, and it's okay, that's fine, no big deal, we can handle that. Now, obviously, it's a little more than a couple of weeks, so it's not a direct correlation because I think they're on opposite sides, but it does help fill in that gap for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. Out in the summer goes Rasmus Ristolainen. One of the Rasmus I are gone. In comes on the blue line some big names. Of course, Wolanin today. And, of course, Will Butcher, Robert Hagg. Big changes here. Of course, both of them are on show me 1-year low cap deals. How does the blue line all look now, Joe? Who's going to be paired with Dahlin so far, at least?
It's a really interesting setup, honestly. When you look at the team, you're just like, boy, I don't know about this team. But considering the questions that were surrounding it, I'd say the defense maybe has the most upside out of everybody. I think the addition of Butcher was interesting because he's got a lot to build off of from last year because he had a terrible season last year. Robert Hagg's got, final year of his contract. He wants to get another one. And he might be looking forward to getting traded at the deadline. Same for Butcher. So these guys have got a lot of motivation for it. But Dahlin is the guy. Dahlin's the guy that is going to show what he's about this year. And I think we hopefully got a taste of that in their game against Arizona this past Saturday because he looked absolutely dynamic. The smooth skating, smooth puck handling defenseman that everybody wants to see again. The guy that we saw his rookie year. I think maybe he's back. Hopefully he's back. That would be nice to see.
We're going to get to Anthony's predictions, but following up on that, what do you expect? I know on the article that you wrote, you think Dahlin's going to have a good season versus that bad season he had last year.
Yeah, last season wasn't great, and he kind of continued this trend he has of starting slow, right? His first, you can even go and say as far as a third of the season, right? Every year is a little bit rough, and it takes him some time. That kind of continued on as his best weapons, right, as a player have always been his ability to move the puck and his ability to contribute on the offensive rush. Ralph Kruger's system did not facilitate, it did not accommodate that type of playing style, right? And in a lot of ways, it seemed like he was handcuffed a little bit in that system. It's not a surprise that once the Sabres made a coaching change last year for, I believe it was the last 28 games of the season-ish, to Don Granato, who ran a much more open, high-event system, that Dahlin started to look like Rasmus Dahlin again, right? So the hope is that now that Granato has had a summer to really kind of fortify his system, right, and fine-tune things a little bit. And also you've got the monkey off of his back in Rasmus Ristolainen, who was absorbing those, cornerstone defensive minutes, or whatever your opinion is on him. But Dahlin's the guy, like Joe said. I mean, the pressure's on him this year. He's got to show that and there's no more built-in excuses. I know the Sabres are not built to be a winning team right now. They're rebuilding clearly, but he's got to take the reins as that guy, that number one defenseman who can play 25 minutes a night on your first power play unit and register points and have a positive impact. So again, just to echo Joe, I mean, he is the guy everyone has the microscope on this year.
The Sabres are off to a short 2 games so far, but flying season to the start. We're going to drop Anthony's article about his predictions. You expect roughly about 70-point season. And again, this is JablamSports.com, episode 3 of season 7 right now. Nick Olis, at Nick Good Stuff, asks, will the Sabres ever lose again? Anthony, to follow that up, will they?
I mean, yeah, but you'd love to see a 164-point season, but they've looked good in these first couple of games. And what's interesting, we stress sample size and analytics all the time, and so I'm actually working on an article right now that's just like funny analytic trends, like is a game called a trend, like happenings, occurrences over 2 games, and one of them is that the Sabres are far and away like the best defensive team in the NHL right now, which is really hilarious. I think they're the only team allowing less than 1 goal per game expected at even strength. So it's just funny stuff like that. Like Robert Hagg is our leader in expected goals for per 60. I mean, it's just bananas. So, yeah, and you can't really single out one player who had a bad first 2 games. I mean, it was really thorough dominance by the Sabres in both those contests. And granted, I think those teams' combined record right now are 0-4-1. So it's not like they were, playing the Maple Leafs or the Lightning, right? But NHL teams are NHL teams, and they showed that they could dominate, and it was really nice to see. And like I said, I think over those 2 games, you had only one guy in Henry Jokiharju, who's now hurt, who had a negative expected goal rate. So everyone's just playing really well, and looks like a team effort, and we'll see how long that continues.
Melissa, are you as optimistic as Anthony is, especially with quite possibly Eichel leaving?
When I made my prediction, I think I said the Sabres would get 58 points this season. Ooh. So I'm definitely on the lower end of things, but I think I'm also on the side of I'm trying to temper my expectations or my hopes, because it's easy to say oh yeah, maybe they'll get 70 points. I think last year I predicted something like 50 points, and then, obviously they had 37. So I was very off. So I think maybe this season I'm trying to go into it with the mindset of expect less. And then if it ends up better, that's great. I've loved the way they've looked the first 2 games. I think, in the start of the game against Arizona, things look a little flat. Things were a little quiet. And then, it just kind of picked up from there. I think the game coming up against Boston later this week, I think that'll be a really good test to see, it's a division rival again, and it's, Boston's a pretty good team. They're going to have to play more physical. And I think that'll be a good test to see, is this for real, or is this just kind of a fluky 2 games?
Melissa, they're 7% of the way to your prediction.
They better slow down, man.
We also probably expect big things from Casey Mittelstadt. Last year, he had just over half a point a game. Joe, are you expecting him to really explode this season?
I don't know about explode. I was hoping to see his play trend more in that direction. Obviously, he's going to be out for a little bit after he got slashed on the hand in the opening game, but the opportunity is there for him. I think that's the biggest thing. The chance to grab the brass ring is right there for him to take it and run with it. And, obviously he's going to have to wait to get back on the ice and get back to it here. But with that opportunity and, the lines that they had him set up with, playing with Jeff Skinner, playing with Victor Olofsson, I mean, those are the 2 best offensive weapons on the team. You can't ask for a better situation. And he does have the experience playing with Skinner a little bit in the past. He's kind of played with a little bit of everybody through his time with Buffalo, but I want to see more. I want to see him succeed, because we've seen the talent there before when he played for the United States in World Juniors. We saw it a little bit at Minnesota. Probably would have been good to have another year at Minnesota, but this is that's all in the past now. If he can take a step here, this would be a huge boon to the Sabres, because I think he's a big question mark, because you're not sure what he's going to be able to do.
Before we get to some more younger players, what is the actual update with Jack Eichel? We've seen Kevyn Adams, the general manager, take some time when thinking about what he's going to do, not feeling the pressure of everybody else coming down on him. By example, the Ristolainen trade was pretty good. I know some fans feel that maybe Buffalo should just go into what Jack wants and make the surgery. Is there still a possibility of them at all doing that surgery? And how long do you think Kevyn will take to make this trade, Joe?
I'd say there's a 0% chance of him getting the surgery from Buffalo. Buffalo seems to be dead set on doing it the way that they've said from the get-go since June. And I don't see them changing their mind on that. I think the ship has sailed with Jack, and it's just a question of when he's going to go. As for Kevyn Adams' holding price, I do wonder if he's going to have to come off that a little bit. I think, perhaps the admission at the beginning of the camp that yes, he absolutely is going to need surgery, and no, we're not going to give him what he wants, kind of hurts your negotiating position a little bit. Now that's to say they can't get that position back if they do some things like, if they eat some money on Jack's contract, or they, do something along those lines to make it easier for a team that will give him the surgery and does want him to acquire him. But right now, it just seems like that's all kind of at a standstill. We hear the reports from the insiders that, hey, there was a deal that was close a couple of weeks ago, then everything went dead. And then, Elliot Friedman just said the other night that the Colorado Avalanche put in a phone call, which I think is kind of surprising because it sure seems like Vegas and Anaheim and Calgary and the likes of them are the ones that are kind of, circling the waters for him. But the sooner this trade happens, the better it'll be for Buffalo, the better it'll be for everybody involved, because at least then Jack can get his surgery, he can get healthy and get back on the ice. And the Sabres can finally cut the cord, move on, and just be done with it. Yeah,
not to pump 31 Thoughts tires. People, please listen to the Expected Buffalo podcast, as well as Jablam Sports podcast. But Friedman did reiterate, too, that the Sabres are not wanting to accept salary that way, like keeping some of the salary of Jack Eichel's. Anthony, how does that push them further away, I guess, from making a move?
I don't think they should. Personally, I mean, Jack's got 5 more years left on his deal, unless it's something paltry like $1 million a year, which, okay, sure. But I mean, if they want something significant, like a quarter of that deal held back, or God, dare I say half, I think the Sabres should absolutely not pursue that option. I think in the Sabres position, they'd be more keen to absorb bad money back rather than retain on Eichel. So, and I believe Kevin Adams, from everything we've heard and what we know so far, has been kind of taking that approach, right? Unwilling to absorb some of Jack's money in terms of retention, and more willing to take a quote unquote bad deal back for a veteran entity. So, no, I would not recommend that. I like that approach. I like that part of the philosophy. I mean, there's a million layers to this thing, and God knows when it's going to actually break or what actually has happened, because I don't think you've had more conflicting reports on a single thing since I've covered hockey. So it sure is interesting. I'm glad Joe got that part of the question. So it's like, you could do a whole episode on this, Peter. It's a real labyrinth here. But yeah, no, I support Kevin Adams' position in not wanting to retain. I think that's the right move.
Yeah, the layers of this onion sometimes are pretty stinky, but hopefully they can just rip it and pass it to someone else. And
was that a Shrek reference, Peter?
a little bit. Oh man, but the future still looks bright, right? Even if Eichel leaves, they might get at least a good, decent prospect in that. Casey, Rasmus. We've got Owen Power and all his crew waiting in Michigan, but Owen Power to come. And, of course, Dylan Cousins. What are people expecting from Cousins this season, Melissa?
I think it's really a growing season for him, especially with Eichel gone, with Reinhart gone. He's kind of, had to step up into that position where he's kind of now the focus. Obviously there's Dahlin on the back end, but in terms of the forwards, it's him. It's his forward core to play with, basically. So I think him with Tage Thompson are kind of the forwards that stick out in my mind for this season, and I think it'll be interesting to see what he can do with hopefully a full season, and the weight of Eichel and Reinhart kind of off of him and off of the side now, and just focus on what lies ahead.
What type of player are we expecting Dylan to be, Joe?
I think we're not really quite sure yet. I know when he was drafted, it was with the intention that he would slot in behind Jack Eichel, and that would be the beginning of the top 6 of that would take them into the playoffs and running for a Stanley Cup. That's clearly going to change now, but for what he is, I want to know if he can take another step with his offense. I mean, the offense really wasn't there last year. It wasn't there for anybody last year other than Sam Reinhart. But I think in Dylan's case, I mean, it's his show to run with, but I want to see the offense grow. I like the way he attacks the puck. I like the way he goes after the net. He's able to drive the net and do a lot of things that way. I don't know necessarily that you need your center to do that so much. I think you want your wingers to be the ones to drive the net and your center to distribute. But Cousins it's going to be very interesting to see how he grows this year, because it's going to determine whether or not he's going to be a pretty good number one or if he would be an excellent number two. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Buffalo wants him to be a really good number one center. But if that doesn't play out, listen, they're not going to be good for the next couple of years. If they want to get another center, they can find one for sure. So I know there's pressure on Cousins, but I wouldn't lean on him too hard for stressing him out and saying like, hey buddy, you got to do all this year or else. Like, there's no reason to put that on anybody's shoulders this year, maybe apart from Darlene.
Well, nobody mentioned anything about my beautiful Slug hat. Next time, I hope to wear my Afiniganov Slug jersey. Thank you again, guys, for joining me. That's Anthony, Joe, and Melissa. Thank you guys for stopping by.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Peter.
I want to thank our guests today at Expected by Anth. That's Anthony's new Twitter handle. Joe and Melissa. Always good talking to them, and Joe's a great guy. Let's see if the Sabres can be what Anthony expects with his confidence. Also, Mathieu and Wayne. Well, it was great to have Wayne on. He's got some unique stories to tell, and hopefully we can get him on again to chat about those things, and both of them, to see if the NHL can keep on moving forward and showcase their top talent better. Next week, we'll try to get more into detail into that Evander Kane situation. If you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at PBojaranov or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. If you want to also contact us on our website, go to jablamsports.com/contact. Also, you can find all our info for all our guests and our podcasts, for even game notes for each episode, including this one. You'll get guests info and links to all the things we mentioned on this show. We even have weekly content articles. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Jablam Sports Hockey is your one-stop weekly shop for every expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun community bringing everyone together. Follow us on Facebook. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, we're giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.